David Lorimer. I'm the Program Director of the Scientific and Medical Network, and I'm here with our honorary member, Dr. Michel Odent. He's speaking from London, and I'm speaking from France. And Michel's speciality...
Ironic, because you are...
Yes, I know. The other way around, isn't it?
From France.
That's right.
Speaking from England.
We've got a nice reciprocity there. And Michel has devoted his life to the study and practice of the processes around birth and early childhood. And he's one of the leading people in that field. So it's a real pleasure to have you here with us, Michel.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm going to start by asking you who and or what inspired you in your line of work, which I'm sure will be very interesting.
Yes, it's good that you ask me who and what. Who, without hesitating a minute, I would say my mother. My mother was a teacher in the French school system. Just to explain, she started to be a teacher during the First World War.
Mm-hmm.
What she had understood from the beginning of her career is that the earlier an influence a human being is exposed to, and the more important it is from a long-term perspective. That was what she was repeating. That's why, as a teacher, instead of being a teacher for children at the age of first exam and so on, she preferred to be teacher in a nursery school, as young as possible. That's an influence, that's an influence. And also, she had some ideas, some observations, some important facts. For example, just after the First World War, she had the opportunity to meet an American woman, Miss Cromwell, who was a disciple of Maria Montessori.
Oh, yes.
That's a strong influence, reinforcing what she had understood by herself, reinforcing. Also, she was convinced that the way reading was taught in French school was not the correct one. She was convinced that until the age of 5 or 6, human beings, children can make kind of photos of words, photographic words. So, and at that time, in the French system, they used to talk what is called B-A-B, analytic way, And she said, no, children can learn to make photos of words.
Images.
Yes. I learned to read in the early 1930s through an unusual way, an unusual way. Not analytic way, global way, something like that. So it was a very strong influence at the beginning of my life, probably.
Yes, and what you say about Montessori reminds me of Steiner as well, because Steiner also discouraged early reading. And so this all
yes, it was a little bit difficult. Yes, roughly the same, not exactly. My mother was not discouraging.
No, and were there other medical people in your family or not?
Pardon?
Did you have other doctors in your family?
No. No. Since the French Revolution, all of my ancestors had been bakers in the same French village.
Okay.
An ancestor created the first bakery in the village. Before that, it was a four banal, a place oven when people used to come and make their own bread.
How interesting.
So my
Yes.
ancestors were bakers, at least since the French Revolution.
Right.
Where
Good.
they were the first bakers.
Well, let's move on to the next question. And I
So
think
that's
this
about woo.
yes. Would you want to say something about what inspired you as well?
Yes, so many things, many things. I'll mention one event that I consider important in the second part of my life, probably. You said that I dedicated my life to childbirth. In reality, in fact, I am a surgeon originally. I'm not an obstetrician. But by chance, as a surgeon, I learned the new technique of cesarean section in the 1950s. And by chance, when I arrived in a French hospital, a state hospital near Paris, 1962, to be in charge of a circle unit, nobody, no doctor, was officially in charge of the small maternity unit. So because I had some experience in childbirth in the past as a medical student, because I knew the new technique of cesarean section, the two midwives in charge of 200 births a year were calling me, and we could manage together. It was in addition to my job as a surgeon. And I found that important, interesting, what this period surrounding birth, the newborn baby, what's happening. So I tried to modify some routine. I want to be fast, For example, inviting pregnant women to know the place, the people come and sing with us, singing. I will introduce a birthing pool to relax and so on and so on. So many things like that. The result, that's why you introduced me as an obstetrician. When I arrived there were 200 births a year. But after a while, gradually, more and more, until 1,000 births a year. After 1977, every year we had about 1,000 births a year. That's why people know me as an obstetrician, although I am not an obstetrician. So to explain, very important event in my life. It a little bit by chance. It was, I can say, 1964. A friend of mine was working for a pharmaceutical firm, and he told me we have a new product. It's GHB. We forget the name for it. They said that it's an equivalent of a neuromediator, so it's natural. They say it has a future in anesthesiology. But some people say that it also works like oxytocin, the hormone contracting the uterus during the birth process. He said, do you want to try? Try to use it. At that time, there was nothing very bureaucratic. I said yes. So he sent me bottles. And what happened? That intravenous drip of this product, that the woman who had this drip was crazy, shouting, screaming, walking in the corridor naked, No, it was unacceptable in the hospital setting. But baby was born very, very quickly, very fast. And I understood what is essential in birth physiology. In fact, she had eliminated neocortical control. There was no neocortical control. Baby was born right away. I had understood at that time, with the vocabulary of that time, that importance of the concept of neocortical inhibition. When the new brain, the neocortex, the brain thanks to which we can communicate with Zoom, is active, it can inhibit some physiological functions. And one of them is the birth process. I had understood that. So for me, it's a turning point in my career, this fact. After that, I paid attention to other anecdotes. For example, a woman who was given a glass of champagne when she was in beginning of labor, because her neighbor already had, she thought, "Prof, oh, baby was born in the corridor. There's not the time to reach." So
wonderful. That's a wonderful recipe.
Yes, that has been a turning point. I realized that we have, in general, we have not understood birth physiology among humans. People study why, they say, why is it difficult? Oh, because of mechanical, morphological factors and so on. No, look at human beings. What is special about human beings is this powerful brain, and particularly this powerful neocortex. So that was an event. After talking about a person, an event has been a turning point in my career. Until now, we must say that it's still difficult to accept the importance of the concept of neocortical inhibition. People are not ready for that. Although we have more and more studies about sense of smell, for example. If you take a glass of wine, your sense of smell is more powerful. You reduce neocortical activity. We have the data. We have the information, but we don't want to use that. People still look at mechanics, at morphology, and so on. And so
yes, no, it's a very, very important point, Michel.
And from that, I learned so many things, my interest in emotional state that give access to another reality than space and time reality. It goes also with the particularity of human beings, the effect of neocortical activity and so on. All that is related. You cannot study birth physiology without studying access to transcendence, things like that. It's an understanding of human beings, the particularity of human beings. Human beings with their huge brain, and unique. And this is how it happened in 1964, by chance.
Yes. Well, thank you very much for that. And that really leads on into the second question, which is what you regard as your most significant contributions, because I think, the emphasis on neocortical inhibition is a key contribution. But what else would you say, looking back, are your most significant contributions?
I think my most significant contribution is related to what I understood. Once you understand that, you can, although there is the issue of deep-rooted cultural conditioning, you cannot change thousands of years of cultural conditioning. Think that birth started to be socialized at the Neolithic Revolution. That to say about 10,000 years ago, that long period for cultural conditioning. You cannot change. However, it has been possible in a state hospital, French state hospital, to make birth easier and easier. I don't want to give details, to avoid medication. So we don't know the effect of medication. We know almost nothing. To avoid obstetrical intervention in general. So that was, it has been the turning point, and my main contribution, perhaps it's not yet well understood, It's because the cultural conditioning is too
too
strong.
strong.
It's not understood among people who promote what they call natural childbirth. Because when you understand that, you understand how important it is to desocialize childbirth. When you socialize, you constantly stimulate neocortex, language, light, looking at a woman in labor, you stimulate the neocortex. So, and this is not well understood, in particular among people. I'll show you something. Ah, yes, it's here. Among people who promote what they call natural childbirth. They are not, in general, most of them, are not ready to understand the concept of neocortical inhibition. I'll illustrate that the simple way. A book by a guru of natural childbirth, a guru well known in the USA, more than
Okay.
it's by Bradley. Bradley, perhaps you heard about this book. Perhaps you heard about this book. So a guru of natural childbirth. Just look at the cover. What do you find on the cover? First, you find the word coaching.
Oh, coach. Oh, God.
How can you coach?
No, that's completely the wrong approach. Yes.
You can protect an inhibitory process against inhibitory factors. You cannot coach. You cannot coach an involuntary process. You know? And who can coach? Who can be the guide? Who can transmit what he knows, what has been done? A man.
A man, yes,
The
I know.
husband.
Oh, God.
A guru of natural childbirth. And look at the top of the book, you read the association of two words.
Yes.
The word method and the word natural.
Yes.
When there is a method, it's not natural.
Quite.
So that's to explain how we are in such a difficult situation. Because those who promote what they call physiological birth, natural birth, and so on, have not assimilated that.
That key point.
The key point. It's incredibly difficult to challenge thousands of years of cultural conditioning. It's incredibly difficult. So when you ask me what is my main contribution, I don't know yet. I hope it will be having introduced the concept of neocortical inhibition to understand birth physiology. And it will be my main contribution if one day it's better understood.
And better understood. No, I understand that.
Yeah.
Well, we'll do our best to promulgate it anyway. So I'm going on to the next.
That's the beginning of my last book. You know, it's a little bit like a testament, my last book, because
yes,
at age 93, I make a synthesis. It's a way to answer your question. It's a synthesis of what I have learned and I consider particularly important. And in fact, what I consider important is to understand the effect of social birth. An event like a birth originally in Paleolithic age was probably a solitary event.
Exactly. Now you see that in indigenous people,
yes.
don't you? They
like
go away.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like access to transcendence, emotional state, giving access to another reality than space and time reality. It was also originally probably a solitary experience. That's a reason why I dedicate my book to Pascal. If you want to.
Yes, very good. Well, let's go on to the next question, which is not exactly your field, but I'm sure you have a view on how you see the relationship between science and spirituality evolving over the next 20 years.
Yes. We have to discuss the words. The word spirituality is not understood the same way by everybody.
That's true.
Spirit originally, from etymological perspective, have something to do with breathing. There are other ways to mystical, for example, the same root as mysterious, you know. So I prefer to avoid these terms.
Okay.
That's why.
So what term would you use instead?
In fact, I prefer to explain the topic. We have to, in the future, if we want to go further in our understanding of human nature, we'll need to study emotional states that until now have not been studied from scientific perspective. And the good example are ecstatic, orgasmic states associated with phases of reproduction life. In particular, what I call the fetus ejection reflex. People cannot understand easily fetus ejection reflex because birds have been socialized for thousands of years. And in general, this reflex, fetus ejection reflex, is replaced by a second stage of labor with voluntary movement. So that's why we can understand that. That's why it's not studied as an emotional state. So it's difficult to study orgasmic ecstatic state until now in a scientific way. It will be a new phase in the history of sciences, in our understanding of human nature, on the day when these ecstatic orgasmic states associated with reproductive life will be studied from a scientific perspective. It will be difficult to spend time because all these events have been neutralized for thousands of years. One way to neutralize these events as what I call an highway to transcendence, one is to be associated the concept of orgasmic state with shame. It's a way to neutralize shame. I want to be fast, but just look at the vocabulary in English. Words for nerves, arteries, muscles going to the reproductive zone of our body. How are they called? In English, pudental nerves, pudental arteries, pudental, comme pudere in Latin, to be ashamed.
How interesting.
In French, it's nerf honteux, artère honteuse. So that cultural conditioning that explain why this physiological state, this emotional state, this state of consciousness have not been studied from scientific perspective until now. It's a little bit paradoxical. It's strange.
Yes.
It's what I call the highway to transcendence. So
yes, but I think that's a very good response, because you're emphasizing transcendence rather than spirituality. But I see these as intrinsically related.
Yes. So probably that will be a new phase in our understanding of human nature. The day when we study this orgasmic, ecstatic state related to human reproduction with scientific method. Until now, people don't.
It hasn't been done. Well, thank you for that. And I'm reminded that I think it was probably 30 years ago that you first spoke at our Mystics and Scientists conference. First, I think it was on water and then on birth.
I remember that. I think I spoke twice.
You did. I think they were 93 and 94, that sort of time. So how do you see the significance of the scientific and medical network from your own angle?
I think what's interesting is that with your vocabulary, which is not exactly my vocabulary,
yes,
you are interested in emotional state that give access to another reality than space and time reality. And you associate that with science. So that I think is an important point. It's something that can be studied from scientific perspective. And I think it will be an important step in our understanding of human nature the day when we start these events in a framework of studies of emotional state. Why can we study anger or the emotional state and not the what a woman can occasionally still perceive after thousands of years of cultural conditioning when giving birth? Of course, because now it has been socialized for a long time, we don't think of that. But personally, I can think of that. I can have anecdotes. For example, a woman who found a way to give birth in her bathroom, having closed the door, and she gave birth.
Yes.
It's still possible. It's not common, but it was usual in Paleolithic ages, And she told me, when I saw the eyes of my baby, I thought I have seen the whole universe.
Oh, wonderful.
In the eyes of my babies.
Yes.
That's that emotional state that needs to be studied. If we want to go further, we have to challenge tradition. We need a scientific perspective. If not, we go on restricting our studies to method of ways culturally accepted to reach transcendent emotional state.
Yes.
Until now, when to transcendent emotional state, we think always of what is acceptable. Prayer, meditation, fasting, and so on, song, music, and so on. But there are highways to transcendence that we have neutralized during the past 10,000 years, which is short.
Yes, indeed.
It's not in the history of mankind.
No, that's
I
very
don't
true.
speak too, you understand what easily.
Yes.
I don't speak too fast.
No, it's absolutely fine. But I wanted to ask you a kind of supplementary question, which I think goes in the same direction as we've been talking about the medicalization of birth. And that's the development.
I don't talk a lot about medicalization of birth. For me, medicalization is an ultimate phase of socialization.
Okay.
For me, the key word is socialization.
Okay. Well, I wanted to ask you.
Beliefs, ritual, presence of somebody, and at the end, ultimate form, masculinization, medicalization, but in the same way,
It's within the framework of socialization.
Yes.
I wanted to ask you your view of this prospect of what I think is almost like transhumanist artificial wombs, because I think this is an inhumane development. I'd be interested in your view.
Yes, it's difficult to talk about that. My first reaction was, it's crazy,
Yeah.
incredible. What are the limits, I don't want to say more, except I remember my first reaction,
Yes, no, that's mine too. And I think that as soon as you isolate the human being from the human body, you're going to have a fundamental effect. And I can't. Anyway, I want to come on to our final question, Michel, which is, what have been your most important lessons from life, both personally and professionally?
It's a difficult question.
It's a difficult question, but it's the most interesting one.
I think that there is an important point I have to consider. Being myself, I present myself as an interdisciplinary student in human nature. So one reason why human beings are so special is their incredible adaptability. It's incredible. Human beings can live in polar zone near the Arctic or Antarctic. They can live in the equator. They can be purely vegetarian. They can be mostly carnivorous, and go on and so on and so on, you know. So what makes human beings very special is an incredible adaptability. It means that we have to constantly in our life, it's a lesson that I learned through all along my life. We have to be careful not to be the prisoners of project, always ready to adapt to unprecedented situations, particularly important during the 21st century. Whatever the topic, we are in an unprecedented situation. So we have to start from that. We are characterized by a huge adaptability. So let's be careful not to be the prisoners of project. And it's what I might illustrate that through my own life, you know, very quickly. My interest has always been human nature, let's say that. When I was 17, baccalaureate in French, I did it, I've chosen philosophy. Philosophy, it was 1947, 1948, you know, interest in human nature. But after that, how to study, what to do to go deeper, my understanding of human nature. At that time, there were not really human sciences, sociology, but no, it was not serious. I studied medicine. I went to study human nature. And then another way to adapt. When you are young, you want to be effective. And I realized that the only practitioners of medicine who were effective at that time, around 1950, were the surgeons. You can save the life of somebody with a strangulated hernia or with a perforated ulcer. So I became a surgeon. And then, by chance, when I was in a French hospital, originally as a surgeon, by chance, I was also in charge, non-officially, of the maternity unit. And I thought there is so many things to do in this field. That's why, in fact, I became a kind of obstetrician. Until now, when I realized that an obstetric department cannot survive in a hospital of a small town, because you need teams for epidural anesthesia and so on. So that's why I retired from my hospital career. I created a database, long-term consequences, what we know about long-term consequences of what's happening at the beginning of our life, primary research and so on and so on. And then I enlarged the topic. At the present time, one of my important topics is to study the differences between Homo and other members of the chimpanzee family. And when there are differences, these differences are common points with sea mammals.
Yes, that's going to take us into a completely different topic.
Another topic.
Yes.
But to say what I have learned, to answer your question, is we have to take advantage of the huge adaptability of human beings. not to be the prisoners of project. I constantly deviated from project.
Yes. Well, thank you very much indeed, Michel. That's been most interesting and quite distinctive in terms of the interviews I've been doing with honorary members because of your long experience and pioneering work. So thank you so much for that.